So, dear participants, I would like to once again welcome all of you to our joint EFMA Oracle webinar focused on the topic of making innovation pay. My name is Barbara. I'm leading EFMA webinars and I will be your today's moderator. Before we start, let me kindly introduce our speakers for today. So in the beginning of the session, you will hear some topic and report background from my colleague Alain Hainaut, who is the regional manager at EFMA. So Alain, welcome to the session.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with all of you.
Then we have a pleasure to welcome Akshay Kapoor, Senior Director for Solution Consulting at Oracle Financial Services. Akshay will be the main presenter of the report Insights. So Akshay, welcome to the session as well.
Thank you, Barbara. Welcome, everybody.
And last but not least, we also prepared an interesting panel discussion with senior bankers for all of you. We invited two bankers to share their best practices and experience with the innovation programs. So Sudipta Banerjee, Billing Product Manager of Barclays Bank, is joining the session today. Sudipta, welcome.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you all.
And Marcelo Frontini, Head of Digital Channels from Banco Bradesco, is also joining the session today. So Marcelo, it's a pleasure to have you here.
How are you? And it's a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you.
So we really hope that the webinar will help you to understand the need for innovation, and also we will try to share some best practices on how to achieve a sustainable profitability with innovation programs in your banks. And now I guess, Alain, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Pleasure to be with you again. This white paper is a report of a joint study published together by EFMA and Oracle, and I would like to seize this opportunity to thank Oracle for their support and contribution to this, I think, very valuable piece of content and insights that Akshay will present to you. And the objective of this work was to understand what innovation activities are taking place in banks and which are working and which are not. The report includes practical observations and actionable insights that hopefully will act as a stimulus to you, bankers. It also includes, I think, some very interesting examples of best practice operating models, which might help to, I would say, open the mind of the practitioners and turn the tide for the financial services sector. So I think innovation has been a, I would say, a hot topic and has placed high on the priority agendas of banks for the past, I would say, 6-7 years. So it's nothing new, but it's I think it's important to see banks which are usually considered risk-averse, conservative kind of organizations, taking risk and understanding that innovation is important. So we see that some banks are making significant strides forward, while some others are, I would say, more in a wait-and-see or follower kind of attitude, and we'll. I would say try to open the debate and some thinking for you towards the risk of having too much of a passive attitude towards innovation. The other key question I think is really important to convince your board that innovation is something that you have to embrace fully is how to make innovation pay. And I think the research tries to highlight which are, I would say, the metrics or the KPIs that innovating banks are using to try to measure the return on their innovation. In this dimension of making innovation pay, I think Oracle brings a very interesting expertise towards, I would say, more dynamic attitude towards pricing. We believe that pricing is one of the biggest missed opportunities in banking, and that banks need to have a comprehensive relationship pricing strategy that aligns with their overall innovation strategy to make it more, I would say, more productive exercise. So with this, I would like to introduce Akshay Kapoor, who will present the main insights of the report to all of you. I hope you enjoy the presentation, and afterwards, I would say, together with our panelists, we'll be very happy to engage in the conversations with all of you. Thank you. Akshay, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alan. Welcome all once again. We are here to present the joint study, and we have. Please feel free to ask questions. Comments are very well accepted, and it will be a very insightful session. The more we keep it interactive. So what we are facing today is a new era in banking, right? It is there are focuses on digital transformation. There is emerging technologies. There are shifting business models. Data is the key asset. When we look at advanced technology these days, AI is becoming a household name. Blockchain, Internet of Things, journey to cloud, very, very accepted household name these days compared to when we were thinking probably a couple of years back. New business models are coming into the picture, which are based on social media, gamification, robo-advisors. Data is definitely a strategic asset. And if you look at all the top banks, everybody's investing into structuring the data or making sense out of that data that can be used to drive strategies like upsell, cross-sell, what the customer needs, relationship-based pricing, those capabilities. Digital has gone so far into giving access to the customer where they feel they're very near to the industry, and Uber-like, Netflix-like experience is again being accepted in bank, and there are a lot of challenger banks, fintechs in the world, obviously, that is helping evolve this new era in banking. So to look at how banks can move towards innovations and how they can look to have revenue growth out of innovations, EFMA and us partner together to focus on basically three areas: the need for innovations, what is the experience in innovation program, what are the challenges, what is working, what is not working from best practice perspective. There was about 50 plus respondents, ranging from CEOs to CIOs to CFOs to head of innovations. It had representation from all the units of the banks, so very and across the region. So very rich data that we were able to collect to present this study. Now, what we found out from our survey is that when we look at what are the key drivers from innovation perspective in the banking space, there are obviously internal drivers and there are external drivers, starting from complex infrastructures, complex and very complex processes. Margin pressures are there from internal perspective, where cost is becoming higher, where we have to continuously innovate. Fees is getting reduced. We all know our interest margins are anyway challenged. But you will be surprised to know that when you look at your banking IT spend, 80 to 85% of your spend is still to keep keep your light bulbs on. That means you are spending every $85 of your $100 budget into maintenance of your existing systems. And that is a big inherent legacy that you have from an internal perspective that does require innovation to move away from it, because at the end of the day, the external drivers are not changing. There is a lot of customer expectation. They're used to the Uber, Netflix, Mint type of experience. They want a frictionless experience, and it's very important for them to be able to create a association with bank which is available with the ease, right? Ease of operations is both internal as well as external to be able to work with the bank. Now the thing is, when it comes to banking versus challenger banks or fintechs, they don't inherit this legacy complications that we have from banking perspective, most of the banks, and thereby this ecosystem is challenged where innovations are required. There's not enough money, but we have this legacy sitting with us that is stopping these key drivers. So as per our survey, right, we were able to focus and ask questions to banks. What is happening from the focus perspective? So it was definitely a positive outcome that there are banks. There is definitely increase in prioritization. There is investment dollars being kept aside for innovations, and now in this ecosystem, banks are actually open to partnership with fintechs to accelerate the innovations, because of they have their legacy, and fintechs do not have that. They do believe association with fintechs can accelerate their innovation. So if you look at the US market, Zelle, right, the P2P payment app, now it's being accepted by major banks as their money transfer tool. So it's happening out there. So as indicated by our servers, by our survey, there was definitely increase in prioritization, and there is also acceptance of partnership with fintech. Now this brings to an interesting point, and we did some survey questions around this. Do you want to be the first mover, or do you want to be a fast follower? As Alan mentioned in his opening statements, wait and see is no longer an option. If you can wait, then probably you will die, and then somebody else will take you over, and then you will be in a follower mode. There is definitely encouragement to be the first movers, but there is definitely within the ecosystem of bank, there is certain roadblocks that make them that stop them from being the first movers. Especially if we look at the ecosystem of the banking world, there is, when we make investments, there is a requirement to have a clear sight to ROI, and there is only there is a fear of risk of failure. Whereas our survey did point out, and our discussions that we've had with some of the banks, that there should be reward for failure. There should be return of failure as well. And that, as long as banks are able to adopt, they will be able to be the first movers rather than fast followers. So, so as per our survey, we were able to sort of find out some key findings, and one of them was that there is definitely ample amount of resources which are allocated for innovation programs. About 90-95% of the respondents believed that it is like that. However, when we look at what is the dedicated team, then only half of them were able to confirm that there was a dedicated team for innovation. Now, bringing back to the fintech world, if you look at it now, let's say a company that is putting out payments transfer, they have entire team looking at only payments transfer and innovating there in the payments space. However, when you look at banks, if they are allocating resources who have their day job versus they have to deliver on innovation, obviously there will be challenges. Banks are very risk averse and inherently very conservative. We talked about there is a lot of legacy that they inherit. There is fear of risk of failure, and there is always this unclear path to ROI, which makes more risk averse. So there is this. Our survey was able to establish those two facts as well. But this is a very interesting side that I look at, and this survey actually also shows why legacy systems and complex processes are hindering banks to make the innovations better. We found out that if you look at it, more than 75% of the projects take minimum 9 months to 12 months for a bank to deliver an innovation idea. So once we get the idea, it takes about 75% of them take 6 months and more for them to get approval, and then 90% of them take 6 months or more for implementation. So if you're looking at that, so 3/4 of the innovation ideas that come into a bank, it takes about anywhere between 9 to 12 months to deliver. And these are the key issues that are stopping the legacy issues that are stopping banks from doing that. Now, there's obviously this ROI path and all that stuff, but one of the key areas where banks should be looking at is that innovations do add to their revenue stream. There is capability of introducing, when you introduce new products, new bundles, you introduce new partnerships. There is this capability of doing true relationship-based pricing, which allows you to have the affinity to your customers. Because no matter how fintechs are evolving, but banks still have the trust of the customer. I'm still scared of using an app before 2,000 people have rated it. There are reviews on the websites that this app is a safe app to transact. Before that happens, I'm not still confident in using that app. However, if my bank, one of the big banks in the world, if they release a new payment, faster payment or same day payment technology, I would be more than happy to use it immediately. I wouldn't wait for reviews and comments because I know my money is safe over there. So there is definitely this relationship with the bank that helps us making sure that you can use relationship-based pricing. Pricing is a key tool. The other piece is, as we are seeing in the PSD2 world, the whole API monetization. So what we are preaching from our pricing and billing space, we are saying we should be able to put in the right process to offer the right product at the right place at the right price. Now, if you look for that, there are definitely need for smarter strategies, pricing strategies. And if banks are forced to innovate, open their gates of trust for others to make money, there should be something for banks as well. And every survey that I've seen, the survey that we did, indicate within top 2 that opening up of the banks, the key focus should be revenue generation from that. So you should be able to align your pricing strategy to look at how the data is being accessed and be able to create a pricing strategy which is as per the customer buying pattern, where we call click buy buy or click buy buy, which means our pricing strategy should be should be able to anticipate if this is a subscription model or a continuous relationship versus one-time relationship. And then for that, you have to make sure your data is there, you are innovating, there is relationship that you recognize. And more the banks are forced, like PSD2, to open their access to the fintechs. We should be able to charge based on API metering, but more on the value that the banks deliver, and also be able to even share the revenue if the fintech brings it to the bank. So best practices, quickly, I'll take just 1 minute before I open the discussion for panel. We are looking to create a new type of bank, digital experience focused for elderly customers, company-wide innovations. We do believe that the CEO should be the chief innovator officer, should be pushing innovations, should create an internal ecosystem, more awareness internally about innovations. Date no longer is not a criteria. You should be looking at the multidimensional view of the customer to be able to see how to value that customer's capability, be able to do relationship-based pricing strategies to keep your customers with them and still continue to innovate. And I'll give you one quick example before I open it to my panel for discussion. So I bank with one of the top banks in the world, and I give this example many times. And I have I'm US based, so I have my mortgage with them. I have my main credit card with them. They have my salary account where my salary gets deposited on a monthly basis. They are my primary checking and primary saving account. And if you put the entire relationship together, it's about say $500,000 to $600,000 worth of relationship. But there was a time when so US is still a check market, a cash market. Yeah, we do issue checks in US, probably one every day. And I went to my bank and said, hey, I ran out of checkbook. Can you issue me a check? And they said, oh, you have to pay me $20. And I'm looking at it, I'm saying, okay, I have 600,000 worth of relationship with you, and you're asking me $20 for the fee. I pay more in interest on my mortgage. So there should be a relationship based pricing view to waive off this fee, and they should be giving me checks free so that I do more with them. But that is the world we live in. With that thought, I will open the discussion with my panel, and Marcelo, why don't I start with you? Barbara, am I doing good on time?
Sorry.
Yes, I think we have half an hour for conversation. I think it's very good.
So, Marcelo, if you can hear us. So, based on the presentation that we did just now, what is your perspective being a banker, right? Where do you see banks investing most or innovating the most?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending our webinar. It's a pleasure to be with EFMA colleagues all over the world. So Bradesco, talking about the Brazilian market, we've been investing a lot in peer-to-peer transferring. Although we have peer-to-peer transferring from day working hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., all the banks, the market is asking us to have a real innovation all day long, even doing would be 24 plus 7 days a week. So this is a huge investment, and we see a lot of fintechs and other players, and the big players like Facebook or Google, and also Apple just announced that you can do a transfer through iMessage, so we are investing a lot on this. Another big pillar that we are investing is related to cost reduction. So all of our process, we are trying to change to be a paperless process and also a digital authorization. We are talking a lot with our regulators, and they are being very open because the consumer side, the market are pressuring also our regulators. Why? Well, if I can do a lot of things, even with government, you approve with my digital authorization, why not the banks? So we've been implementing and investing in this kind of innovation. So for example, mortgage, we are just going to an end discussion with our regulator. Why not sign up a mortgage contract from the bank's digital authorizations? And another thing that we are investing a lot, and we saw many banks all over the world doing that. Bradesco has more than 8,000 branches all over Brazil. So we still think that our physical presence is important to the relationship. We know that customers are not going a lot to the branches, but in our case, Brazilian market, people goes a lot to our branches. So we have to improve our customer experience when you are at the branches. So I would tell you that those are the three main aspects of what we are investing in innovation in our market.
Thanks, Marcelo. Sudipto, what about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. I think I've kind of touched upon a couple of subjects, a couple of points by Akshay and now also by Marcelo. Just going back to one of the comments that Akshay made at the beginning of his presentation around the spend on existing infrastructure from a bank's point of view is around 80%. I think my view on that is very, very similar. Even though we talk about innovations and business development, but majority of the SI or strategic investment that is secured year on year is spent on reg and man. I think we call them regulatory and mandatory kind of activities. One thing we haven't touched upon so far is the changes due to regulation is hugely impacting to the banking investments basically. So there are a couple of areas in the regulatory. One is to comply with the regulation. So it's not, there are opportunities that can come out of a regulatory change, but generally what we see is as a first step, majority of the spend is done around complying to the regulatory requirements, and then as a phase 2 approach that ties back to the business development or discretionary spending is where you basically make something out of the regulatory changes and create new ideas. Second point is the platforming, standardization of application software. And Akshay, you spoke around 80% on existing infrastructure, but I kind of see that packages both changes for regulations and changes for replatforming or maintaining the current structure. Another area which is very, very common nowadays is the controls. There are a lot of issues that we have seen in the investment banking side or in the corporate banking side, issues around how we conduct our business specifically in the UK in the last few years. There were quite a few number of mis-selling which was quoted, and on the back of it, there was a huge focus from the regulators to improve the controls that are implied or that are applied in banks. So there are a continued focus around how do we do our business in a more controlled manner. Ultimately, we're trying to help customers, but the focus is basically not to impact them. Generally, we are also seeing digitization, which Marcelo just talked about. One of the areas that I see is improving the customer journey. Now, end-to-end using digital platform, which is Marcelo's example was mortgage. I can quote another example on lending or KYC and onboarding. Huge focus is given there, and how can I reduce the time it takes to open a bank account? I mean, you would be surprised that there are cases where it takes weeks in certain banks to open just a simple account. And then back and forth communication happens on signatories and documentation and stuff like that. That's another area of focus, and data analytics, which is very timely in the market. Because of all other regulatory changes, for example, in terms of GDPR, in terms of PSD2, open banking, and in the UK, all of them, has today, kind of an impact on the data analytics side as well. And how do we make more sense of the information that we have and monetize on that, rather than because there is an opportunity for other players to utilize these assets from the banks. And the point of view from the bank would be, how you can actually make out of something of the data asset that we hold. Now, these are the general kind of trends that I'm seeing in the banking today, Akshay.
That's awesome. So key thing is, from Marcelo and Sudipto is obviously one thing is there. The regulations are sort of one key area that is stopping you guys from a challenges perspective. But it's a very interesting perspective that both of you are giving, because Marcelo, you from the Bradesco side of the equation, from Latin America, and then Sudipto from Europe perspective, Barclays, giving this insight into how you guys look at it. And Marcelo, that discussion around going for mortgage contract through digital authorization. This is an interesting thing, right? Currently in US, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for me to get a mortgage, even though I have a relationship with the bank. So yes, those type of things definitely need innovation, and it will definitely make lives of consumers like us much faster. I think it is customary for me to ask this question, but I do get the answer from the first stuff as well. But Sudipto, if you were to highlight the two biggest challenges that you from Barclays feel that are some sort of roadblocks into meeting your innovation goals.
Yeah, Akshay, I wouldn't probably say these would be the two biggest challenges, but what I can say is, other than what we have kind of touched upon in the earlier conversation, and there are a couple of areas that I can highlight, which wasn't covered in the past in our conversation earlier. So one is the culture of the organization, because most of these banks, or our banks, are there in the market for quite a while, and it is not just the legacy applications and what's the revenue that we do and whatnot. It ultimately created in a particular shape, a particular structure, how we do our business. Now, if you want to compare with a fintech kind of organizations, and you need to think about that, I have to behave like a startup. I have to come up with ideas. I have to execute them quickly. I have to test the market quickly, and then if it works, I continue with it. In a banking environment, because of that size and the complexity in the organizational structure, that becomes in itself a challenge. You talked about, Akshay, earlier, in a bank, it takes 6 to 12 months to get an idea. If I talk about my experience, I think it'll probably be 6 to 12 months to get an idea, approved and resources aligned to execute that idea. So that's one topic, or one theme that I see is around the structure and the complexity of the structure. And the second thing is, I think we kind of, again, this is where the majority of the fund is anyway spent. But once you find out a particular opportunity, then trying to find the relevant skill set, it's another huge challenge. How do I then, because if this is a newer technology, there is a scarcity of the people available to use this, and how do you then utilize the skill set available and then do something about it? So I'll probably, in my view, these are the two areas that we haven't touched upon in our earlier conversation, and I see them as a challenge.
No, that's a very interesting point, and I think the culture perspective is where, so even our survey was mentioning, right, that we do have people for innovations, but we do not have a dedicated team, right? So goes back to your point that even if you come up with the idea, it takes that much amount of time to find the right skill set, to find the right resources, to find the so one of the things that the survey also talked about is, one suggestion would be to get people from outside as well as internally, which come from different backgrounds, which come from different, completely different, unrelated areas, and sometimes that gives us a better opportunity to innovate. But those are very good points, Sudipto. Marcelo, how about you? If you were to list a couple of or 2 or 3 challenges that you believe the bank face to meet their innovation goals.
Marcelo, you are self-muted, so probably
Yeah, sorry.
there is.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay.
I'm back again. So regarding what Sudipa mentioned about culture, we think the main challenge for us, because we think innovation, I think all of you agree with me, innovation always is related with time to market, right? So we have that one of the slides talk about first mover and fast follower. And in our culture, when we innovate, we have to be among the first or the second bank to be implementing that, for example, that new service or that new technology or something like that. If we are the third, the fourth, they don't agree it's an innovation, right? So time to market for us is very important because we still, and I think you saw the other slide that we could see from the research that still take us, the big banks, 6 to 12 months to implement something. So we still have inside our bank, the product-driven areas, like my colleagues from the credit card business, my colleagues from lending business. So if I want to implement a new mobile application that has a very good customer experience, but my colleague from the credit card business doesn't like the way the guy from the lending side like, we take like 3 to 4 days discussing the way we should implement. That's not what we have to do. We know that we have to change the way, and we have to agree that, well, it's not being the owner of the business, right? But let's try to be the owner maybe of the project. So we are trying to implement some agile methodology that it's not anymore the business owner, but the project owner. So that will be a big challenge for us. And I think I agree with Sudipa when he mentioned about culture. And the second main challenge, to be very fast of discussion, with the big retailer banks, so I'm focusing my discussion regarding the consumer side of the big banks, the retailing side of the big banks. We implement, ATMs, and then we implement call center, then we implement desktop solutions. So for each one of these, we implement different technologies among those 20 years, right? So it's very hard for us to bring an omni-channel experience to our customers. So I think that's the other challenge, how my customer can have a whole integrated experience through all the channels. And that's why it's hard to innovate, because then I innovate in my mobile application, but when you go to the branch, it's not the same experience. So that's another big issue that we have down here. Thank you.
Perfect. I think, yes, go to market, if we take 12 months, and if we are not able to tackle the culture, yes, time to market will always be the issue. So very good point, Marcelo. And obviously throughout the channels, the same experience is definitely a very valid point, because I think because if I get used to the app, if I go to the branch and I don't get the same experience where I have to stand in the queue, or the teller takes 5 minutes to find the right data, it won't work for me. So yes, very valid point. But Marcelo, continuing with the thought with you, I think obviously culture is one thing that needs to be fixed. But if we were to suggest a couple of steps that banks should take to to expedite the focus towards innovation. I think obviously there has to be, if there is a way by which you can prove within the bank and change the culture and say, look, by doing this investment, here is the additional revenue stream that we are looking at. That would definitely help. But can you tell us what could be the next steps?
Well, thank you for the question. So I think it's very important to all of us to have a very top senior executives strategy alignment. And so we got this strategic alignment like 3 years ago. And although it was very, we got some hurdles because some business, they thought they were behind the others. So the senior innovation committee that was created in our bank, they made the prioritizations. It was very important because, you know, maybe you come from a business side that today is important, is the cash cow of the bank, but it won't be the cash cow of the bank for the next 2 years. So once we realized, okay, you are important for our revenues this year, but for the following 2 years, we need the other area to invest more. And then I think was very important as for all of us to have this strategic alignment. So after that was easier to tell people why we were trying to innovate in this area, not in the other, not that we don't like the other one, but because we are thinking and implementing for the future, right? The second main step that we think is our IT colleagues, they really have to be very open and to create a broader API based services, right? Bradesco still, we don't have enough APIs. I need more, so that's I'm pressuring the IT teams to, because when we talk to our fintechs that we want to co-innovate with them and integrate their service with our service, if I don't have that API, it takes me like 3 to 4 months to develop. And then the fintech think, okay, Marcelo, so I'm gonna go to the other bank because I can wait 3 to 4 months, right? And the third thing, I think also Sachpa mentioned regarding culture, we also are hiring people with different and very different diversity in experience, also different industries, and also different backgrounds. So to design our apps, we are hiring, for example, people from architecture, people from design that was designed, for example, cars. And also we brought in psychologists. And I couldn't think that, for example, in my team, I have a person that her background is she's a psychologist. So she's helping us a lot how to think better in the way to think more from the customer side. Thank you.
Thanks. Perfect. Sudipto, what about you?
Yeah, I think I can kind of come up with probably three high-level steps, that we can try and see and adopt if possible. And the first one is, I think Marcelo touched upon, which is alignment. But I'll probably raise a different point. Obviously it has to be the strategic alignment, but one of the things that we also see in many cases, this innovation team that are responsible for finding cases or something like that, they are generally assigned at a group level. So for example, in our banks as well, if I talk about the innovation, it's not part of every business unit. You would probably see that it's a group funded initiative because not every business unit would have acquired a specific budget to spend on innovation. So question then is, if you are aligning it at group level, how do you then drive an agenda of a particular business unit? Because many banks are not just focusing on one particular segment, because generally banks either work on the retail and the corporate side or on the investment side. And if you are, happen to be one of those banks who deals with everything, every part of the banking, then how do you then focus your business area, which could be specific to retail or specific to corporate, versus overall group level agenda of innovation? So that's kind of alignment. In my view, it has to be aligned to the business unit. And obviously you can secure the funding from a group, but more focused around what you are trying to innovate and where. Next thing is define the problem. What are we trying to solve? Because many cases what we see is these innovation ideas are technology driven. I have a blockchain in the market, and I have some cryptocurrencies come up in the market, and everybody is excited about how do I implement that in my banking environment, rather than finding the actual case for what the problem I'm trying to solve and what technology is suitable to deliver in that area. So this is something, as I see, very important. It should not be a technology play to prove a point. It should be against a particular use case and trying to solve that by the help of technology. And ultimately is, once everything is done, we also have to have a mind of where it would fit in the overall organization. Again, touching back to Marcelo's earlier point that the person may move in a couple of years' time, and if we do not align that strategically, this would not float, and after a couple of years, it'll probably die its death, early death. So the question then is, if this particular innovation is successful, going back to my earlier comment around the complexity around the banking structures, the organization, how the target operating model of this particular innovation fits in, because you are working, whether it's a part-time or a full-time as an innovator inside a bank, but once the product is done, it has to be then commercialized. It has to be handed over the team who would be managing it and maintaining it in the future. So how do I align that into my end target operating model? That's another thing that we should be looking around before working on the innovation journey. Thanks.
Thanks, Sudipto. So alignment, focus, like a project owner rather than product owner, project owner to drive the thing. Agile. Very good thoughts from you guys. I think in interest of time, I just want to take a couple of questions. So the first question is,
okay, actually,
I think this.
Yeah, you have the question? Yeah, okay.
Go ahead, Barbara. I'm trying to go and find the question.
Yeah, because actually in the meantime, we received 2 questions from the audience. Moreover, if you have any questions like the other participants, please feel free to write them down. So we got a question from Emmanuel from Piraeus Bank Greece, mainly regarding the slide which you showed, which was focused on the crucial question to be a first mover or fast follower. So Emmanuel is asking if it isn't cheaper and safer to be the last movers or the first followers instead the other way around. So actually, maybe you can start with your thought, and then Marcelo, Sudipto, or Alan, you can simply jump in.
Yeah, I think that is my favorite slide. Yes, if you look from a cost perspective, yes, it may be cheaper to be the first follower. But the thing is this, right? If you are the first mover, then you get the market. And the example that I always give is, we all have preferences, whether I want to use an Apple iPhone versus a Samsung a smartphone. But if you look at it, when Apple came up with the smartphone concept, they took the market. Now, yes, Samsung has come in and they are trying to innovate and take the market away from Apple, but Apple did make a lot of money by going in there first. And they would the loyalties towards Apple, people who use Apple phones. Many of us, I'm probably on the 10th upgrade now, but I've remained loyal to Apple because I feel more confident using that. So that's the balance that you have to be in. That whether you want to be the first mover or the fast follower, and Apple and Samsung is the first example that comes to my mind. Yes, it may be cheaper now. You've already seen what Apple can do, and Samsung came back with their set of products, but Apple still made a lot of money by being the first mover. Marcelo, I know that is your favorite slide as well. Probably I'll pass the baton to you first for your thoughts, and then maybe Sudipto or Elan can also add on to us.
Thanks for this question, Emmanuel. So I will give you an example from Bradesco perspective. Our Brazilian market, we have a high ratio of fraud, unfortunately. So the banks down here, we invest a lot in innovation regarding biometry. And for example, Bradesco made a decision like years ago, we decided to invest in a biometry. At that time, was the only one very, very safe. It's the palm vein biometry. And if you could ask me, well, Marcelo, after 8 years, so we were the first mover. After 8 years, the fast followers, they are using only, finger vein biometry. But at that time, this investment paid for us. So we had all the investment paid. But now it's very funny. I have all this legacy with 35,000 ATMs with a palm vein biometry, and the competitors, they are only using finger vein. And the government, they are, Brazil is going to have a national election this year, and the government also is implementing a finger vein. So consumers are asking us, why not change it to finger vein, Marcelo? Bradesco is only the one, the palm vein. So for us, it paid off, but now we have to move forward. But I agree with you. Sometimes we have to think in our cost and benefit models, regardless of the market. But sometimes we invest in a technology that we thought would be the leader, and then I don't know, many of you probably did the same. But we invest a lot in the Windows Phone. And then when Microsoft decided to stop producing Windows Phone, I still have like 3 applications with Windows Phone, and I don't know what to do with that. So these were some examples to see that I think we have to think for each innovation and make the decision together with your leaders. Thank you.
Very good point, Marcelo. Alan or Sudipto, you want to add something to that before, I think, interest of time, I may take the next question.
Well, I like to say it's part of taking risk and being a market leader. I think Ogilvy said about advertising that 50% of the advertisements he made were helping to sell more products. He just didn't know which 50% of those advertisements they were. But I'd say more seriously that one of the return on investment also for being a pioneer or leader is I would say building a brand, an awareness that Bradesco or like in Spain where I am, CaixaBank is bank that is usually the first one to move. And I think we're talking about attracting talent. And I think it's, for example, a major factor for attracting talent to your bank, where you make yourself more attractive.
Akshay, I can very quickly, maybe 30 seconds. I think I'll probably use the very famous answers to any questions you ask in MBA course, any MBA course that you do, and the answer is it depends. I think it's a very difficult kind of a situation. I mean, if you think about it from banking relationship point of view, that if I'm an organization and I'm talking about in a corporate banking or institutional banking, it's very difficult to change, even though maybe another bank is offering another product or maybe top of the market product. But from a company point of view, it is very difficult to change and just start utilizing who is the first mover in a particular market. And then you would expect or wait your bank to then follow, and then you kind of start enjoying, because ultimately industry will catch up at some point in time. But then if you look at the example that Marcelo quoted, those are the examples where you're then talking about the retail element of it, where people can actually switch around very quickly, and hence there would be an advantage of first mover. Thanks.
Perfect. No, that's a very good example. Barbara, do we have another question?
We have one more question. Maybe we need some kind of clarification regarding the presentation, Akshay. Sami from Meridian Credit Union is asking regarding the slide. I think it's number 16. How are banks shaping their innovation journey? You indicated creating a new type of bank. That means setting up a digital bank for elderly people. So he was not sure if he understand, or if you can clarify, that would be very useful.
Sure. So look, the theme of innovation has been always, specifically in digital, is ease of use. Now, millennials are very tech savvy, and when the Facebook come out of the world, all of us were able to access Twitter, Facebook, new apps, Remitly and the Zooms, Zells of the world. So millennials are very tech savvy and they adapt to apps and digital experience much faster. When you plan your innovation and specifically in digital world by targeting an elderly audience, then the ease of use becomes the epicenter of the entire innovation in digital space, because it's not about if you come up with an app or come up with a digital experience, how the millennials accept it. You have to look from the perspective, if the elderly can use it, then yes, that is what you have achieved the state of nirvana. That's why we say, when you look at digital experience, try to keep it very simple and look from the perspective of an elderly. Your father, my mother, I had to coach them how to even use WhatsApp, right? For example. So that's the reason why we call digital experience targeted with that mindset, so that you keep ease of use, ease of adaptation as the epicenter of your focus, not a tech savvy audience that can adapt to usage of digital experience much faster. Hope that clarifies, but I'm happy to take a further question on that, or Barbara, or if anybody else wants to add to it, Alan or Sudipto or Marcelo.
I think there was a bank in Italy, it's Unicredit, launching a new digital bank called Buddy Bank, and their idea was to make it so intuitive that even their grandmother would be able to use it, not just the millennials. So I think design and ease of use, I think is something to strive for, and not with one target in mind. I think it was an interesting approach. The question I'd like to ask you also, Akshay, and to maybe the others in the room, that we've seen several banks, you touched the issue of legacy, and that 85% of IT investments are dedicated to maintaining the existing systems. And to that, there are, I would say, two approaches. One which is probably symbolized by BBVA, which has been engaged on a very ambitious journey to revamp its whole IT. And the other approach is, okay, it's too much work. Let's keep the, I would say, legacy bank as it is, and let's start a new bank on the side with a new brand and with a new IT, and we'll attract I would say, the more modern customers, and eventually the old one will die. But we see that some banks like, Hello Bank from BNP Paribas, or Imagine Bank from CaixaBank, actually new brands, but using the main legacy IT. So building up a new bank with this new IT seems sometimes more easier said than done. What can you say, Akshay, on that?
Yeah, look, one thing is, obviously, everybody talk about journey to cloud and those sort of things, but yes, legacy systems are definitely the fact that the banks carry, and there are several ways in which we can tackle that, and that will take about 15 minutes for me to respond and Alan. But yes, cloud journey, PaaS, being agile, those are the key areas where we can help to cut the pack, or partnerships with fintechs are also helping in that area, where you can sort of leave whatever you have for now and create a parallel ecosystem and let the legacy die by itself, a natural death. So those are some of the very quick ideas that I can talk about. But with Sudipto or Marcelo, if you want to add, that would be awesome.
I think this is Sudipto. Just a thought. I mean, it's not easy, from a bank point of view, to also start a parallel infrastructure. Let alone many banks wouldn't even have a end-to-end test infrastructure. So you're talking about replicating what you have or coming up with a new digital or innovative ideas using a parallel infrastructure. So that's, I think, it's not practical in many cases because of the complexity of the banking that you're engaged with. From a bank which are upcoming in the market, because they're focusing on an area to begin with and then growing with that, it is easier for you to focus on a particular area, but you're already an established bank, it gets very difficult to do that. And that's where the replatforming and investment in the existing infrastructure takes place, where you are targeting one area of your system and then you're upgrading it, rather than you're basically starting from the scratch as a digital bank.
Okay, so Deepta, thank you very much. Marcelo.
Marcelo speaking.
Yeah, if you can briefly comment on that, because we are running out of time.
In our case, just very quickly, we developed a new digital platform. It's a new layer between our service-oriented architecture and the APIs that we take to the market. So this digital platform is helping us to speed up the implementations, although I told you that it's taking 12 months to implement it. I'm not so happy with that. Thank you.
So many thanks for your comments. As I said, unfortunately, we need to close this interesting discussion because we are already running out of time. So once again, thank you very much for your attention and your time to participate in the session. As indicated in the beginning, you will all receive the video recording and the presentation slides, so then you can review or even share with your colleagues. So once again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at the upcoming EFMA webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks.
Barbara?